I suppose you can scroll
But on the
it.
other hand, you don't have to carry a bunch of different screens at the same time. Just
Well,
carry
that's
it.
true. Although I have one of these really big iPads, I would not describe it as light.
Okay,
Yeah,
fair.
In fact,
so we
a
are,
smaller one that I bring to school.
we are live. But on that
Live.
point, I had a coworker who, after walking around with a laptop, developed shoulder problems and had to beg the company to get her like a much lighter one or to get two, so she would leave one at home. So we have OC. Could you mark OC present
Yes.
online?
Thank you. I
Virtual.
can hear you now.
Yeah, I just unmuted us. So it
What was the
is,
new rules? Can OC tell us what her excuse is?
she is, all of the excuses, she is taking care of a family member.
Okay, that's one of the official excuses.
Yes.
Does a cat count?
Only if the cat is sick.
I don't know.
Sick cat?
Okay, well, we're not gonna get.
Not tonight, not
Yeah,
tonight.
so it is 7:05. Call the January meeting of the Land Use Committee meeting to order. And welcome everyone to for our first meeting of 2026. We do not have any presentations or any applications to consider. But I wanted to, hello, Vivian.
Hi,
Before-
adding quorum, much needed.
No, we actually made quorum and we
Made
just
it.
called the meeting to order.
Yeah.
Although you're just in time for us to do introductions. So I'm Wayne Benjamin and I chair land use for Manhattan Community Board 12. Starting to my right.
I am Achan Steinbaum. I have been on the board since May and I'm on this committee and parks.
And I'm Ann Megas, and I've been on this committee since May, and I'm on this committee and concerns of seniors.
Thank you. And now to my left.
Vivian Ducat, I'm the public member, and I think I've been on this committee more than 15 years. But anyway,
But who's counting?
Jim.
I'm Jim Berlin. I've been on this committee for decades. Way back when I was actually chair of this.
And I'm Melissa Driscoll Sims, and I'm also a new member, and I'm also on the licensing committee.
Oh,
Thank
I'm
you.
also on the traffic and transport.
And we also have a committee member online. OC, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Osi Kaminer, member of Land Use and Assistant Chair to the Health and Environment Committee.
Thank you. And we also have a board member, Indiana Porthos, who's attending as an attendee, not a panelist, but we, recognize her as being present. And we also have representative from the Department of City Planning, Audrey Watts with us, and we are, quite frankly, thrilled that city planning consistently makes it to our meetings. I mentioned that we don't have any projects or applications to consider, but I wanted to take the opportunity to go over two documents that I shared with the committee mid-December, I think just before Christmas. One of which is the new zoning handbook, and the other is the Manhattan Plan, which we talked to city planning about on a couple of occasions. I'm going to have to, actually, Heidi's not here, so who's taking minutes?
I am taking the minutes.
Okay, thank you so much.
No.
I'm gonna have to get up and go over to the other laptop because that's where the presentation or these documents are loaded. So someone's gonna need to monitor this in case anyone has questions or.
Do you want to do Vivian, or do you want to sit over there?
sure.
Let's begin with the zoning handbook. OC, Audrey, can you see the zoning handbook on the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, great. Okay, stop.
Have, didn't keep, I'm just saying.
Actually, but you back here.
Jeez. I think that helped with the sun. I'm almost, excuse me, chewing with my mouth open. I wasn't speaking patience.
Other sounds do too.
Okay. There we are. So, one of the things that struck me,
We're muted. OC, can you hear?
are we muted?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so maybe, yeah. When I first sent this out, Jim Berlin mentioned that this version of the handbook is structured in a way that it's much easier to use if you're sort of using it more or less as a textbook, if you're sort of using it to, guide someone through. And going through it a few times, it strikes me that it is written in a way that is less technical. So I think it's easier for someone who's not a design and planning or land use attorney professional to understand. Going beyond the the introductions, it gives you sort of a brief introduction of what zoning is. And typically when we are doing new member orientation, I do the blurb that it's the laws that govern what can be built where and how big. And so I think this is a concise definition of what zoning is and how zoning works. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because I think it's like 124 pages, but there are some areas that I thought were particularly useful. This talks about the zoning resolution, which is like the Bible that is amended on occasion that governs those land use. And we often talk about as of right versus discretionary. And this notion of comparing it to your grandmother's recipe for doing something, if you're following her recipe, that is as of right. If you're modifying your grandmother's recipe, that's a discretionary action that you probably need to get her approval on. And I think there are a number of examples where if they're talking about types of building, types of use, they will show you an image of something that It might be the Empire State Building. In one case, the house that was used in All in the Family for Archie Bunker, or in Sex and the City, said, well, this is a use type X house. So I mean, it's a familiar structure, so you're not dealing with it abstract. And then when Noemi was in here, she was asking about the difference between pre-war and tenements. And I was explaining, that briefly, but this section, these 3 pages, I think provide a great graphic timeline of how the city reacted to certain conditions, and how those reactions impacted on how built form could in fact be built. So even before the 1916 resolution, there are things going back in the 1880s where you're looking at light and air. We talk about light and air so frequently, so. We were talking about, the tenement buildings and the old law tenements and new law tenements. And there are some that were literally built, railroad style, so you had light and air in the front. Light and air in the back, and all of the rooms in the middle, you walk from one to the other, but they had no connection, to the outside. So then there were regulations that required, light shafts. And some of those light shafts were so narrow that you could reach your arm out and touch the other building, and so then there were modified regulations, and you got what they call the dumbbell buildings. So you had the bigger light shafts, but your discussions about, light and air before we had zoning, and then even in the 1900s to 1910, before the zoning resolutions, there were reactions to things that eventually led to, the enactment of the 1916 zoning. But then in the 1920s, there were, things that happened. We often speak about zoning, sort of the 1916 and then, 1960, 61. And those are the two, formal zoning resolutions, the original and the first major modification. But as you can see here, there are actions that were taken in the 20s, or there were reactions to things in the 20s that led to, other modifications. In the 30s and 50s, the idea of like the tower in the park, you've heard Jim speak about that, or others speak about that. A lot of that thinking worked its way into the formal 1961 modification to zoning. We could be looking at, as we move forward, we got into looking at things like the environment and contextual zoning and flood mitigation. So these pages, I thought they were, once again, not technical and not sort of a typical timeline that just gives you dots on the line. It's giving you a sense of, moving through time and, what government or planners were reacting to, and then how that impacted, what was required or mandated vis-a-vis zoning. And the very bottom on the right-hand side, you can see the houses elevated, and clearly that was reaction to, flooding and sanding, things of that nature. So I think, going through this is a great tool for us as a committee, but I also think for the entire board, because when there are applications that come before us, or when there are things like City of Yes that are impacting major areas of zoning, this handbook, the prior one as well, but this handbook being less technical, will give folks a sense of, okay, what is being changed? And, what does that control?
Maybe we should ask that this handbook be made available on our website.
I think I made that request, but what we need to do is make sure it happens.
Or if you have at least a link to it.
Exactly,
Right.
it's because it's available digitally for free. So there's no reason why, we can't link it to our, to our website. And this is what I was talking about, when we talk about use groups, these are just images of, what each one means. And then we have use groups and buildings, so, we're looking at, for example, Wakefield, or the building that was used in the Royal Tenenbaums, or Wellington College, or if everyone knows TWA or the Empire State Building. So, they're referencing buildings that we would know. And so if it's a use group, 7, and you see the Empire State Building, you think, you get a sense of what goes in that. So that wouldn't be a brownstone in use group 7. So once again, I said I wasn't going to go through this in the entirety, but just looking at the way it's illustrated, it's illustrated in a way that is, a lot less technical, I think easier for anyone to approach. But that was my sense. What, from the committee's perspective, and I think, Jim, you've already mentioned that, but anything else you would add to how you receiving this compared to the ones we had before?
It's almost good to have the whole one available too, because it's more like, it basically is just all the details without the nice explanations. So if you want to know what R7 is, you turn to the right page, you know all about R7. And this doesn't have to say some detail.
I'm indexed.
In the very
But,
back.
again, I think this is so much more transparent, so much more useful to the average person.
Yeah,
Teaching tool.
yeah. I mean, this is a great
Well, I think,
document that shows you different floor area ratio, comparison to buildings that you recognize.
Wayne used the magic words, it's practically a textbook.
It's better than a textbook.
There are actually some good textbooks.
You wrote them, yes.
No, I know someone who did, but I didn't like it.
So. Other thoughts? I'm assuming everyone had a chance at least to take a quick look at it.
Yes.
Thoughts?
I thought it was really helpful. I know I had shown you at the last meeting, like I printed it out and I just thought it was really useful. I mean, I don't have anything specific to say. I just thought it really was. It was like it was a great learning tool, like somebody who's new to the committee and yeah.
Very well done.
Yeah.
And I found the original one hard to retain. I've opened it so many times and then still it's like, what did I just read about?
Same, yeah.
That's an interesting point because the old one. The actual zoning resolution, if you've ever seen it, if you remember the old unabridged dictionaries, I think the zoning resolution is like, 2 or 3 volumes of that. So even, design and construction professionals can find that overwhelming, and they found the old zoning handbook useful. Because it was more,
Better.
it was more concise than going to the
Yeah.
unabridged dictionary. And, as Jim said, having that still available, and you could probably still reference the old one, is great if, depending on what you're using it for, but, for, let's say, community-based organizations that may not be that familiar, or just individuals, this version, can get you, I guess, up to speed enough that you can go to the older version and make use of that, because some of the level of detail there might in fact be important depending on what project you're working on. So OC, I wonder, do you have anything, any observations on this? Since you're the only one not with us in person?
I don't have any comments at this point.
Wayne left out one of the best lines of the city planners, because there's this, voluminous zoning text document. If you read it and think you understand it, it proves you don't. I love that line.
So I'm gonna stop
Wayne
sharing this stuff.
Wayne, I had a question if there's
Sure.
time. Thank you. I was just wondering if we knew like what sections might be updated based on the ballot initiatives from 2024. Or if like if there's like any updates on when modified text might become available.
This was done during 2020.
I haven't read it completely, and Audrey might be able to answer that. And I was going through both documents, so I don't know, one of the 2 documents references City of Yes. And I don't know if it's the Manhattan Plan or the new zoning handbook. Audrey, are you able to respond to that?
Yeah, I know the Manhattan Plan specifically references City of Yes, especially with regards to the new avenues opened up for increased residential density. As far as the zoning handbook goes, let me get back to you on that. I mean, it incorporates the, post CHO, well, I guess all of the City of Yes text changes, but I am not recalling a specific reference.
Okay, well, but the other thing that occurs to me, Indiana, is You know, the basics of zoning were not changed by City of Yes.
Yeah.
What's allowable in a number of categories, but you know, floor area ratio is floor area ratio. You know, bulk is bulk, you know, setback is setback. And what the zoning handbook is doing is really defining and illustrating what these various things mean. Having said that, I have not gone through all 138 pages of it, so there may in fact be a section that's, you know, talking about how, you know, City of Yes modify certain underlying things, but, you know, but think about the zoning handbook as being sort of a dictionary of terms and tools.
Got it. Thank you.
In the back, they have, they go through all of the kinds of zoning.
Yes.
So, and this is sort of, the good thing about the previous handbook is it's in several pages on R7 with pictures and stuff. But if you just need the numbers, like, you know, the FAR, there it is.
Yeah, and the old handbook, and I haven't checked this one, but the old handbook has a number of charts in the back, so if you're at certain residential zoning, there are commercial zoning equivalents. And there are charts that you can crosswalk if you're in R8. What is that if you're in a commercial zone? So I'm pretty sure they kept that, but if they didn't keep that, it's still available in the older version.
Just in the Manhattan Plan, on page 41, it talks about the City of Yes for housing
Yes,
opportunity.
and I'm about to shift to it.
Okay,
So I'm gonna
I
stop.
think somebody just in the chat put in the links, just if anybody's following online, the links to the two handbooks.
That's
So,
good.
if anybody's following along.
So R12 has a FAR of 15.
Who's
It's a nice number to have.
Jose Trucios?
He's from City Plan.
Yes, so thank you. You put them in the.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, just to clarify, I didn't put the zoning handbook, but I put the zoning resolution link, and especially for the question about when to look for updates and sections. So the zoning resolution does update, you know, not often, but when there is a map amendment or so, it updates, I believe, every 60 days, 30 days. So the latest update has been on the 18th of December. And it typically is at the landing page of the zoning resolution, so you can take a look at what is being changed and you know, continue to go what is called recently adopted. And the other link that I share is the zoning text corrections, and there is an email notification that you can enable, you know, so you can get a notification when zoning texts are corrected. And this is often when there is a typo, when there is a you know, an error that or a section that was eliminated by mistake, or as you know, when you look at a specific zoning resolution, when you're reading at something, it directs you to a different section in the other section, and you continue to move along. Sometimes those links are not working properly, and you know, that's when the zoning text corrections are implemented, and typically those don't go through any, you know, JULAR, CPC, or any, you know, legislative process. They ACME changes, but there is a you know, a link that you can follow in specific days where these sections were corrected, because they were in applications that were corrected under administrative changes. So just to provide a little more information on the zoning resolution there.
That's great. So I would say, thanks, Jose. So I think in response to Indiana's question, it wouldn't be the zoning handbook that we would look to for the City of Yes, and how that implemented. We would go directly to the website for the zoning resolution itself. And there at the landing page, it would give you a sense of what was updated when. So let me stop sharing the handbook. And we're going to now go to the for the patent plan. Can the folks online see the screen with the Manhattan plan showing?
Yes.
Great. So actually, we talked about the Manhattan plan, I think, a couple times. And it's not a zoning action or development plan. It's a framework, for lack of a better term, for guiding, development in Manhattan with the aim of, I guess, identifying, where and how more housing can be developed. And the approach that was taken, by the city, was to cast a wide net and to, go out to various, I guess, activities on the street and to get input from residents directly, but they also consulted, with other stakeholders, and there was a portal to which anyone could submit ideas. So on behalf of CB12, I submitted at the beginning of the process a number of the resolutions that we passed over the years regarding housing and development guidelines. And what comes to mind before I guess we get into discussing the plan or the themes of the plan is I wonder if the folks at City Plan can give us a sense of how the input received from stakeholders, how the input received from, entities like CB12, how that informed what ultimately went into the plan.
Yep, I'll take this, Audrey. We were, I thank you for your email earlier. We were like looking to respond to that, but I needed to get a little more clarity from leadership before I send you a response on that. As you guys know, we're in the mid of the transition process at the moment. I think during this time it's a little bit hard to say what comes next in terms of priorities, in terms of like what initiatives are going to be taken on. So we are in this period of the transition where we're waiting to see while we're still working with the applications that we got in hand. So we want to be sensitive to what any communication that comes out from the department, in terms of future plans, future outreach, or work that was going to be completed. That being said, I did review the Manhattan Plan and multiple times, and all of the information, and I believe there were multiple resolutions, more than 8, that included multiple pages that CB12 sent to us and also directly to the team working on the Manhattan Plan were shared. And although I didn't want to speak about specific examples, I believe in page 75, if I'm not mistaken, there are 2 or 3 sites that were specifically related to CB12, the Coliseum Theater, and as well as Broadway areas that have underutilized sites. There is also, the Broadway and Amsterdam part of the work in order to respect the character of the build area. So a lot of the ideas and also concerns that the board share were also shared by other community members. So, we kind of, or the team working on this essentially put together all of these responses and feedback and had a merge of different ideas proposed for the plan. But I just wanted to point out that there were specific points where CB12 was specifically highlighted on those. We try to avoid for the most part mentioning specific geographies and specific sites, just specifically because since this is not an actionable plan, we didn't want to give the people the sense that there was going to be some sort of action taken within these 6 themes and strategies that are being proposed.
Yeah, I appreciate that. The page 39 I pulled up, and I was going through the document. I thought, this one page kind of summarized the approach the plan was taking pretty well. The 6 themes, housing, transportation and job centers, housing in areas with greater housing potential or low housing production, housing on city or government-owned sites, housing on private sites, development process and regulatory environment. I guess we're looking at reforming that, and alternative development methods and building methods. And I was saying, if I were to roll back to the early 1980s, in graduate school, these would be some of the same things, same themes we were talking about then. So I'm wondering, in the course of the various forms of engagement, did city planning or did the team come across anything new in terms of a theme or a suggestion that, hasn't been seen as kind of good planning policy for decades?
I would say all of them, were good planning, ideas suggested on this. The other one that I wanted to mention that I saw repetitive in some of the community board responses was building in the shoreline, similar to what, we discussed with CB12 some time ago on the decking, to expand a little more of the waterfront. So, although it wasn't specifically highlighted for the area in CB12, it was mentioned, as an example and a strategy for Battery Park and other ideas. There is also the process of the development on regulatory environment. That section was a little more tricky, and I think there was the calls for the AMI to make it more aligned to the areas or so, to the specific geographies of the community boards. That was tricky in terms because there was also the ballots for different affordable housing, fast track, and different things. So a lot of these ideas were new, I would say, but also things that people were already asking for. So some of them weren't surprises. I don't know specifically if I could, highlight one over the other to say, this was something that we had never heard before. But yeah, I will, take all of them as, again, ideas and as part of, strategies to explore in the future.
And I think we all realize that, this plan came out in December. So this plan came out at the end of the Adams administration, and we're in January. I understand it's really much too early for city planning to have a sense of what is the commitment of the new administration to this, although if they're interested in affordable housing and doing it, there's nothing in here that wasn't seen as good planning approaches in the last 2 or 3 decades. But do you have a sense of when it might be a good time to reach out to city planning or to the mayor's office to have them talk to us about how they view next steps for this Manhattan plan?
Sorry, I muted myself again. In this case, it's a little bit harder than to predict on this. I was talking to other people who have been in part of the transition team on this, and typically by February, March, we will have a more an assured sense of what comes for the agency in terms of leadership. If the current chair is going to stay at the position that it is, executive director, follow-up meetings with the new deputy mayor, housing and development, the mayor itself. So typically around February and March, we'll have a more I would say directed approach to come and talk to the community, and specific for what comes in terms of next term initiatives.
So, if we think about the politics of it, everyone is talking about whether it's in city government or in federal, first 100 days. Do you think it makes sense to wait and let everyone kind of figure out what they're doing the first 100 days and maybe approach this as a conversation in April or May?
I would say I can speak on that. Unfortunately, I'm not part of the leadership or the senior leadership, the department or at City Hall at the moment. So I'm not looping these conversations. I'm sure some conversations are happening at the moment. As I know, the current administration, the Mandan administration was fond of the City of Yes initiative and, was setting multiple reports and different interviews during the campaign. So, there is some possibility that this might, be a continuation of this. There was the talk of City of Yes for Families that was part of the Adams administration that could potentially, come on board on this. And I believe, there are conversations ongoing at the moment, but can give you an 100% sense of, what comes next between now and March.
Oh, no, I mean, I absolutely understood that. I was trying to get a sense of when it might be reasonable to ask folks to come and speak to us. And it strikes me that, doing it in February, March might be too early. And that's why I was saying, does it feel better to try to do an outreach in April or May?
Oh, sorry, for the board to reach out to us. Yes, for sure. April, May should be fine. I was talking about more internally for us. We will have a better sense after we meet with City Hall and our leadership meets with City Hall, which is expected to happen between now and March. So I think, yeah, April and May definitely makes sense for us to even us to come directly to the community board or the public at large with, the next set of work that is going to come out of the agency.
Okay, and just for, the committee, I mean, I skipped by a lot of stuff, and I said, once again, it's 120 pages. I think one of the things that we should do is take the time to go through it. And so when we, reach out to city planning, maybe we should plan in the next couple months to have together a set of questions to pose to them about the Manhattan Plan, so that when we have them to discuss it in April or May, they have a sense of what are some of the things we would like them to discuss. But as I pointed out, the plan, outlines a framework to address the housing shortage, and it, aims to enable 100,000 new homes over the decades. So that's like 10,000 a year. And I don't think we've been at that level of production for a while. And in terms of how, the outreach was done, as you go through this, they point out they engage people, in person. And that's what I mentioned. There are, lots of events where they would set up a table and do that. They did digitally, and as I mentioned, we had the portal with things to be submitted. And there was stakeholder, engagement with briefings and focus groups and interviews. So, the input was gathered in a number of ways. We have the plan. Let's take some time, digest it, come up with our sense of, do we see ideas that we've shared? As I mentioned, and there were like 8 CB12 resolutions. Do we see things in the plan that are echoing ideas that we've shared? If not, are there areas where we'd like to see, further work done? But are there, once again, from the committee, as you were taking an initial look at this, initial impressions or questions? Sure.
I just want to reach out to the Department of City Planning, both in terms of the handbook and the Manhattan Plan. That, from my point of view, they've been really excellent work, and they deserve to be complimented.
So Audrey, Jose, city planning just got compliments.
They're gobsmacked.
Thank you.
Said you never get compliments. What does that mean? Online, OC, Indiana, anything from you?
Nothing from me.
OC?
Nothing here.
Okay, but everyone is charged with, we've got the document, and we're not looking to have a discussion about it in the next month or so. So we have the time to go through it and come up with whatever questions we would like to discuss with city planning in more detail sometime in the spring. Let me stop sharing.
Wayne, I do have maybe one question about strategy. Would it be a good idea to reach out now and request the meeting, even if we anticipate that it won't happen until April or March? Just to kind of like save a spot?
Well, I mean, we can certainly, and I would say that, Audrey and Jose are, with us now. I can certainly confirm that we would like to have a discussion, with them, or, I mean, the Manhattan Plan, there may be other, city government agencies that are part of discussing it, but we'd like to schedule something for the spring. We can confirm that by email, and they can get back to us to say whether April or May is better. We can certainly do that.
Thank you.
And on an unrelated matter, Indiana, there was an announcement from HPD that they picked a developer for the housing project on 9th Avenue. And I checked with Borough President's office. And right now, there do not appear to be any discretionary actions. So that's probably all, as of right, once again, under the new inward rezoning. So there's no reason for them to come to land use. But I thought that Housing and Human Services might like to nonetheless invite them to get a briefing, get some more detail on the project and, layouts and income levels and things of that nature. So I believe I sent you that email.
Yes, thank you very much. And I will, once we get that going and get hopefully a time set where they'll come to speak with us, I'll share that with land use in case you folks want to join.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
What's in the chat?
Anything else? Nothing new?
Okay. And it's in the Q&A?
Oh, okay. No, yeah, we're good.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the link. Oh, Hector Bonilla put a link in the Manhattan Plan to the Manhattan Plan.
Yeah, I can, Hector's also a board member. I can certainly share, actually, I already shared the links with the office. That's why we have them on the laptop there. I could certainly, reiterate that we would like to have them shared with the entire board. And we'd like to have the links added to CB12's website, so they're readily accessible to anyone who goes to the website.
I asked a question about how closely anyone's trying to tie improvements and increases in transportation volume, ability, whatever, to the housing that's being planned and built places. Does that get discussed, or are people in their own silos?
To whom are you posing that question?
To you. But has this been discussed, and then maybe somebody else would know the answer?
The impact on transportation comes up every time there is a new project or a new project of, some size. And you may recall that in the reso for the inward rezoning, there was a section that, discussed that. And, we spent the better part of 2025 trying to get a comprehensive update on the various commitments, which EDC was going to take the lead in organizing until the last minute when EDC is not taking the lead. That being said, there's nothing that prevents CB12 from individually reaching out to the various agencies and organize, as we said, we wanted to have sort of a town hall meeting to do this, or at the committee level, TNT could have the folks who are involved update them on the commitments in the inward rezoning, because everyone is looking at the new residential in the area of not only the Ninth Avenue project, which is going to begin, but all the buildings that are already completed around like 207, 215, and how
Right.
they're massive in comparison to what was there. And the question is, can the subway service in that location is basically the number one?
Right.
I mean, you can walk up a little bit to the A train, but can the stations handle that? Are you going to have more trains? Are you going to improve the platforms, which are a little shaky? Are the stations accessible? So these are all, you know, reasonable questions that we really need to follow up on. And some of these some of these commitments don't really fall under land use. Which is not to say, you know, we can't make it a business to ask the question, but I think, you know, TNT, you know, should pull in those agencies that relate to them. Health and environment, that infrastructure, you know, and the existing water and sewer take all of these new buildings? What's being done? And I think there've been some discussions, but it's something that I think leadership of the board really needs to emphasize that with the committee chairs that, you know, there needs to be commitment to follow up. That and your board need to say, we will do what we thought EDC was going to do, is we will organize, we will individually reach out to HPD and city planning and, you know, DOT and whomever has commitments under their jurisdiction, arrange something for months down the line. So they have time to, you know, agree on a date and, you know, have a presentation that walks us through what has been done, what's in the planning stages and what is yet to be done. And as we discussed earlier last year, there may be commitments that no longer make sense and need to be modified. And if there are, what are those? Jim?
I'm a member of the Traffic and Transportation Committee.
So beat up on them to get it done.
No, I vaguely remember that we've already reached out to DOT in terms of the street traffic stuff in this new area.
What about MTA?
I don't think we've done that yet, but, and then, on some level, one train infrastructure sort of is what it is. And, well, for example, the 125th Street train station.
The platforms are terrible.
Right, and not only that, but there are no elevators either. There are two escalators, thank God. But, and.
Sometimes.
Okay, every now and then, well, especially when they're not going up.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, so again, you know, there may be, but we will, but I will mention this to the community.
Right, and in the Manhattan Plan, this is on page 25. There's a list of how development can deliver benefits. One of them is to improve our transit system, and it points out that development adjacent to transit station must consult with MTA on an easement opportunities, you know, for future station improvements. And this is something that isn't new. There are a number of buildings, some of them are on the theater district, where when the new building was built, there's a new like subway entrance built in. Along the A and the C, there are a number of entrances there. And actually on the number one train at 86th Street, there's an 87th Street entrance, which is in the apartment building that was built there. So with all of the development that's going on, the question is, can it be leveraged to do something? As Jim said, the number one train infrastructure is what it is, but with all the new development, can you leverage that development to improve it?
Right.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask one other question that relates to that, but with traffic and transportation, does that also have to do with like parking? Like I just saw that this week, like the Twin Donut site, which is at 218, I think in Broadway, they just filed permits this week. And they said something about it being like, I think like 83 units and like they're gonna put 22 parking spots in. There was just another building built like another block and a half up from there. And that's all that's the one train station, which is not the best either. It's a pretty small platform. I guess who would handle that, like how that's gonna impact parking in the area? Well, is that also traffic and transportation? Like, are these buildings required to put in a certain number of parking spots? I think most of them don't have parking spots.
Well, remember, one of the things that City of Yes changed was the parking requirements.
Yeah.
So reduce
Reduce,
parking, particularly if you're in close proximity to a subway station, but that's actually not new. Because I think under MIH, if you were within, I don't know if it was a 5 block or 10 block radius, the parking requirement was reduced. And if you were building affordable housing, the parking requirement was reduced. So one of the things that was pointed out is, although City of Yes reduced the requirement, it did not prohibit you. So if they're saying they're building and they're going to have 80 spaces, you'd have to have a pretty big building for zoning to require 80
Well,
spaces.
it's 83 apartments,
Oh.
22 parking spots.
Okay, yeah,
I think it's something along, it's
Right.
80 something apartments, 20 something parking
right,
spots.
right. So
Okay.
Just to amplify, the whole parking requirement thing is actually part of this committee, it's part of the zone.
Okay.
And the other thing that the city has been trying to do is get people onto public transportation because it's far less,
it's greener in theory.
well, the buses may be free, but the other thing is that, the whole subway system is electric. It doesn't, the trains don't pollute at all, basically. So, but as Wayne pointed out, the zoning doesn't prohibit the builder from putting in more parking spaces, but if you live, a block away from the subway, but
An elevated subway with no elevator, right? I mean, there's a lot, none of those
Yeah,
one train either.
The zoning doesn't take that into consideration. It's proximity to the subway station. And I mean, when they were built, none of them were accessible.
Yeah.
And so the modifications to zoning were the thinking of having greater densities near transportation nodes and reducing parking requirements. They were talking about that in the 70s. I don't think we had ADA in the 70s. We might have had local law 58, or not even clear. But that doesn't mean we can't say, when we talk about our capital needs, there are a bunch of subway stations that we've identified as needing to be made accessible. We should check to see what we've said about, the number one train in that area. And if it's not on our list, clearly for our 2026 ask, with all of the development going there, it should be added.
Yeah.
Well, they're all supposed to be accessible by 2055.
But a new crop of people will be.
Well, yeah, it'll definitely be extended.
Unfortunately, I don't think anybody's getting rid of their cars. If you
Well,
live
yeah.
around there, it's
I think
a
even
traffic
though
jam.
Things are supposed to be accessible by 2055. And we could say, given the concentration of new development in a particular area, what's the plan for this station in the more near future?
Yes.
Anything else on the Manhattan plan? So the task for the Mission Impossible team, if you choose to accept it, which you must, is to absorb, review the plan, come up with questions, I guess, since we want to talk to city planning about, or city planning and, whomever, the mayor's office, the borough president's office, in spring, and I will reach out once again to city planning, have them, pencil us in for, April or May, and let us know which of those months is better.
I just Googled the issue of elevators and elevated train stations, and it sounds like they're making progress, because, for example, there's a station at Smith and 9th Street in Brooklyn, and it's 90 feet high, and they are putting in elevators.
That's great.
So, ideally, I will remember, and that can be one of the things we will work on.
Yeah, I
Because-
just looked into it, so, 207, 191, and 157th are all proposed for ADA upgrades in the MTA's 2025 to 2029
I
capital
think that's
plan.
the 8th.
No, that's on the one.
It's the one.
It's
Yeah.
also on 207.
Yeah.
Okay.
The A up here is more accessible already. The stations that are not are Dykeman and 190th.
Yeah.
Obviously proposed 80, right, like capital, right, like I don't know that that's a guarantee of anything, but
Are
It's
any
on
of the
there,
ones on the
proposed.
one train elevated stations, or are they all on?
I think that's 207.
207, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's also,
And
the
250.
A, they have a stop the A and.
And 215.
Well, that's good.
Elevated.
Yeah.
What was the third one?
252, so 207,
207.
191st and 157th.
And you
I know the
remember
elevator.
years ago at Dykeman, was it the downtown side that was accessible?
Now they're both accessible.
Yeah,
Right,
it's
but
fully accessible.
When we were discussing that, we were told that they couldn't make the uptown. We said, well, it looks like you could either, cut through the parking lot at some point or just, and what wasn't doable, suddenly they were able to do. So we get a lot of, it can't be done, but if you don't let it rest, maybe it can be done.
Someone at Traffic and Transportation said the magic word for all of this, we're dealing with 311, persistence.
So with that, I'm going to sit down because there's nothing more for me to share.
You won't persist.
I will not persist in saying.
Persistence.
Means me.
Someone who got actually accomplished something with 311, I forget what it was. but- July.
So we were discussing, I think just as the meeting began, that Daniel Bonilla is not only no longer on the land use committee, but he's no longer on CB12. I believe he's already in California or something.
Well, I wrote to him because what I had heard when Kathy spoke was he was in Hawaii, but he's definitely not in Hawaii yet. He visited Hawaii and he likes it.
Well, yeah, he is miles away from Washington Heights and Inwood.
Gonna miss it.
So
When
it's,
you relocated?
you don't say that, okay? So we will have to get at least another member so that we have an odd number. And Heidi, do you have a sense of whether you're gonna, you don't know?
If,
So we may need to get two if Heidi's pulled off because she's now our treasurer,
yes.
but you don't.
Yes.
So we'll be looking forward,
Well, if you feel like
Yeah.
being a glutton for punishment, you could mention our wonderful new chair that we would like to stay on two committees as well. If you have the energy for
Okay,
it. The treasurer is in
I'll
fact.
take it under advisement.
Treasurer is a significant job now. I've been on the board for 1,000 years. The reason we created the position of treasurer originally is we would give it to the former chair, so that way the former chair would be on the executive committee, and basically the treasurer did nothing. And now the treasurer actually has to work. Which is actually good.
not as much as the secretary, but yes.
Secretary is the worst.
So is that a new question? No,
I think they're both.
that's okay.
Does anyone know what that blinking triangle thing means? It's been puzzling me for months.
I think that's
It's telling us.
the AI.
AI, I know.
Somebody's recording this meeting. That's why take minutes.
It's like the
I
cap.
know, actually, you can turn on a transcript, and that would make it much easier.
I don't know, yeah.
It doesn't work all that well. Remember at one time, this was years ago, and someone was, arguing that we really didn't need to do that because they were a court stenographer and the system is great. And we had minutes once that were from the system. It was 172 pages of gobbledygook.
No, it's much better now. In fact, what infuriates me with Apple is that the captions that Zoom does are so much better than Apple.
No, Apple sucks in general with AI, yeah.
Well, just the dictation.
Yes, but I was watching
Puts curse words in your mouth.
at the general meeting last month, the closed caption. And if you're sitting there and you're listening to what is being said, you can sort of make sense of all of the errors. But if you just have that, I don't know what you make of it.
Yeah, actually, I have an entirely different impression. I find it's from, well, of course, I'm used to Apple Dictation. Compared to that, it's marvelous.
Were they using Apple?
No, they're using the Zoom thing.
Right, but there was something where the word completely changed, it wasn't even close. And it's the sentence that said, if you didn't know what was being discussed, that whole phrase would make no sense.
Advantage of the captioning, because our colleague Mary has a great deal of trouble, Mary Ann, from hearing. You can now read the captions and again, you know, well, again, they're better than Apple. I think I'll be saying very much. And I think recently it's got worse. Well, maybe I mumble now. I think I mumble.
Yeah, you do. It's all the vodka.
I had a student who mumbled, and one day I said to him, Andrew, you mumble. And he said, I don't roll.
So as I mentioned, I wanted to, go through sort of an overview of the zoning handbook and the Manhattan Plan, and we've done that.
I think that was very helpful.
Is there any old business for us to go over?
No.
Is there any new business?
You're seeing the 6 and the 1 on chat and Q&A, that's all been answered.
Yeah, this is all old.
Yeah, that's right. Old business.
New business? Hearing neither. And I wanted to make sure I shared with Indiana the information about the 9th Avenue site, which I did. And I wanted to make sure we knew that we're going to have to work with our new chair and others to get at least one more committee member, maybe two. If there's nothing else, do we want to adjourn until next month?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, it is what? 8:08.
That's very good.
We are adjourned.
We've learned a lot.
Good night, all.
Have a good night.
Good night, all.
We eat this or do they want